Imagine you are flying through space. Not in low Earth orbit, where the International Space Station flies, where Earth still fills a third of the horizon and where home is a few hours away. Not to the moon. 3 days of travel, a distance that feels significant but is nearly nothing compared to real deep space. Imagine you are flying somewhere genuinely far. To Mars, to the asteroid belt, to the outer planets, into interstellar space. You are in a capsule. Outside the window, absolute blackness, a few thousand non-twinkling stars, and, if you are lucky, a small bluish disk that used to be Earth growing smaller. Nothing else. No surface beneath your feet, no horizon, no sky with clouds. Just the capsule and the void. And in that capsule, you. Your body was shaped by 4 billion years of evolution in a very specific environment. The surface of Earth with its gravity of 1g, with an atmospheric pressure of 1 atmosphere, with a magnetic field shielding you from radiation, with a 24-hour daily cycle, with a biosphere that produces oxygen and food and regulates temperature. None of this exists in deep space, and this is precisely why deep space is not merely an uncomfortable place, it is an actively hostile environment for biological organisms. Not in a metaphorical sense, in a literal one. Each of the physical factors of deep space works against the human body, some quickly, some slowly, some irreversibly. Tonight we are going to examine this honestly and specifically, not as a list of frightening facts, but as an analysis of why exactly the human body is incompatible with deep space without technological protection, and why this incompatibility is so deep that even the most advanced technologies we have or can imagine only partially address it. This is a story about biology, about physics, about time, and about how fragile life is when you remove it from the only planet it was made for. If the night is long, stay. Let us begin with the most obvious and fastest killer, with vacuum. Interplanetary space is essentially a perfect vacuum. The pressure there is about 10 to the minus 14 atmospheres or less. This is trillions of times less than the pressure of the air you breathe. For practical purposes, zero pressure. What happens to the human body upon sudden exposure to vacuum? The first myth to dispel: the body does not explode. This is a popular image from science fiction, a person in space exploding like a balloon. This is not true. Human skin is strong enough to contain the pressure of blood and tissues. The body will not explode. What actually happens? Air immediately leaves the lungs. If a person held their breath, the pressure differential will rupture the alveoli. This is why the correct procedure during depressurization is to exhale, not hold your breath. Fluids on the surface of the body begin to evaporate: saliva, tear fluid, the moisture of mucous membranes. At reduced pressure, the boiling point of water drops. At low enough pressure, water boils at body temperature. This is called ebullition. Fluids in tissues begin to boil, to form gas bubbles. Gas dissolved in the blood, primarily nitrogen, begins to come out as bubbles. This is the same process that occurs in decompression sickness in divers who ascend too quickly. Loss of consciousness occurs in about 15 seconds due to the absence of oxygen in the blood reaching the brain. Not because vacuum instantly sucks oxygen from the brain, but because the lungs can no longer oxygenate the blood. The oxygen already in the blood is consumed by tissues in roughly 15 seconds, and consciousness fades. Irreversible brain damage, about 4 to 5 minutes without oxygen. Death within minutes. But here is what matters. If a person is returned to normal pressure and given oxygen within about 90 seconds of vacuum exposure, survival is possible. This was demonstrated in NASA experiments in the 1960s, when test subjects were accidentally exposed to near-complete vacuum in suits that lost pressurization. One subject was able to report that the last thing he remembered was the sensation of saliva boiling on his tongue. Then he lost consciousness. He was saved in time. Vacuum itself kills more slowly than people think. The real killer is the absence of oxygen. But in real deep space conditions, pressure loss means both simultaneously. No surrounding atmosphere, no backup airlocks, no rescue within seconds. Vacuum in the context of a real space mission is fatal if protection is compromised. Let us now talk about radiation, about what is the most insidious and least obvious killer in deep space. Earth is surrounded by two forms of radiation protection. The first, the magnetosphere. Earth's magnetic field, generated by the rotating liquid iron core, deflects most charged particles, protons and electrons, flying from the Sun and from deep space. Without this field, Earth's surface would be exposed to significantly more intense radiation. The second protection, the atmosphere. The layer of air above us is equivalent to about 10 meters of water in terms of radiation shielding. It absorbs and scatters most cosmic rays and high-energy particles that make it through the inner magnetosphere. On Earth's surface, a person receives about 2 to 3 millisieverts per year from natural background radiation. This is a safe level. On the ISS, already about 150 to 200 millisieverts per year, 50 to 100 times more. The ISS is inside the magnetosphere, which still provides partial protection, but it is above the atmosphere, the first shield, so the dose is significantly higher. Beyond the magnetosphere, in interplanetary space, the situation is fundamentally different. Two main sources of radiation. First, solar wind and solar energetic particles. The Sun constantly emits a stream of charged particles. During normal activity, this is relatively mild radiation, but during coronal mass ejections, powerful plasma eruptions from the Sun, the flux of high-energy particles can increase by thousands of times. Within hours, an astronaut in interplanetary space without shielding can receive a dose of several sieverts. The lethal dose for a human is about 4 to 5 sieverts in a short time. Second and more constant source, galactic cosmic rays. These are particles, primarily protons and nuclei of heavy elements, accelerated to relativistic speeds by supernova explosions and other catastrophic events in the galaxy. They arrive from all directions with high uniformity. They cannot be completely shielded against. They are so high energy that they penetrate most materials. Moreover, interacting with heavy elements in shielding material, they produce secondary radiation. Thick lead armor can in some cases increase the dose rather than reduce it. On the Moon's surface, about 380 millisieverts per year from galactic cosmic rays. On Mars's surface, slightly less due to the thin atmosphere, about 230 millisieverts per year. In interplanetary space, during a flight to Mars, about 400 to 600 millisieverts for a journey of 6 to 9 months one way. NASA's current lifetime radiation limit for astronauts, 1,000 millisieverts for an entire career. A Mars mission with travel in both directions, plus time on the surface, can exceed this limit in one mission. But what does radiation actually do to the body? Ionizing radiation damages DNA. DNA molecules in cells receive breaks, single-strand and double-strand. Cells have DNA repair mechanisms, and most damage is corrected. But as dose increases, the number of damages exceeds the capacity of repair mechanisms. Some cells die, some repair incorrectly with mutations. Some mutations can lead to cancer. At low doses accumulating over years, the main risk is oncological. Estimates for a Mars mission give roughly a 3 to 5% increase in lifetime cancer mortality risk. This is a significant risk, but not immediately lethal. At high doses in a short time, acute radiation sickness, nausea, vomiting, hair loss, immune suppression, bone marrow damage, at levels above 2 to 3 sieverts. Death within weeks from infections or bleeding, above 6 to 8 sieverts without treatment. But there are also more subtle effects that have emerged from ISS data. Changes in the brain. Studies of astronauts after long missions revealed structural changes in the white and grey matter of the brain, changes correlated with accumulated radiation dose. Impairment of cognitive functions, memory, information processing speed, executive functions. Vision disturbances. A significant proportion of astronauts after long ISS missions report worsening vision. This is connected to intracranial pressure, fluid redistribution in weightlessness pressing on the optic nerve. Some changes do not fully reverse. These are not just scary stories. These are data from NASA and Roscosmos, from real people who went through real missions. Let us now talk about gravity, or rather its absence, and what happens to the human body when it disappears. The human body assumes the presence of gravity. Every system, skeletal, muscular, cardiovascular, vestibular, immune, is calibrated against a constant field of 1G. This is not accidental. Evolution occurred in these conditions over billions of years. Gravity is part of the biological context in which our body was built. Remove gravity and problems begin. Bones. On Earth, bones constantly experience mechanical loading, the weight of the body, impacts while walking, muscular tension. This loading signals bone-building cells, osteoblasts, that density must be maintained. In weightlessness, the loading disappears. Osteoblasts become less active. Bone-destroying cells, osteoclasts, continue their work. Result: bone mass loss at a rate of about 1 to 2% per month. In 6 months on the ISS, an astronaut can lose 10 to 15% of bone mass, especially in the load-bearing bones of the hips and lower spine. Calcium from bones enters the blood and is excreted in urine, increasing the risk of kidney stones. Bones become fragile. Muscles. Without load, muscles atrophy, especially postural muscles, those that support the body against gravity. In weightlessness, they are not needed for posture maintenance. Over 6 months without active countermeasures, muscle mass loss can reach 20 to 30%. On the ISS, astronauts exercise 2 to 2.5 hours per day, specifically to slow this loss. This is a significant portion of the working day, and exercise only slows the process, does not stop it completely. The cardiovascular system. On Earth, the heart must work against gravity, pumping blood upward to the brain against the force of gravity. In weightlessness, this work disappears. The cardiovascular system adapts. The heart decreases in size. Absence of load leads to atrophy like any other muscle. Blood volume decreases. When an astronaut returns to Earth, their cardiovascular system cannot cope with the sudden load. Blood pressure drops when standing. Fainting is common in the first days after return. The vestibular system. The inner ear contains balance organs, the otolith organs, that sense gravity. In weightlessness, their signals no longer match other sensory inputs. The brain receives contradictory information. The eyes see one thing, the muscles feel another. The vestibular apparatus is silent. Result: space motion sickness. Nausea, vomiting, disorientation. In the first days or weeks of weightlessness, most astronauts experience this. Fluid in the body redistributes. On Earth, gravity pulls fluids down, toward the legs. In weightlessness, this does not happen. Fluid redistributes evenly. Some of it shifts to the upper body and head. Result: permanent facial swelling, nasal congestion, like a cold, elevated intracranial pressure. This intracranial pressure is probably the main reason for the vision problems we mentioned. Pressure on the optic nerve and on the back wall of the eyeball changes the shape of the eyeball. In some astronauts, a condition called spaceflight-associated neuroocular syndrome, SANS, develops. This can lead to permanent vision deterioration. the immune system. In weightlessness, immune cells behave differently. Several studies show that NK cells, natural killer cells, the first line of defense against infections and cancer cells, reduce their activity in space. Viruses that exist in a latent state in the bodies of most people, particularly herpes viruses, can reactivate. Under stress and immune dysfunction, dormant viruses wake up. Studies of saliva and blood samples from astronauts showed elevated levels of reactivated herpes viruses compared to the same individuals before flight. Let us now talk about the psychological dimension, about what prolonged isolation in a confined space does to a person in conditions of absolute distance from everything familiar. A crew on a spacecraft heading to Mars will be isolated, not the way a person at a remote scientific station in Antarctica is isolated. There, at least, there is air outside, a sky that changes color, the possibility of going out and walking around. Isolated in a metal capsule of perhaps a few dozen cubic meters, with a few colleagues they cannot replace or walk away from. With communication delays to Earth growing from a few minutes to more than 20 minutes one way. Communication delay is not just a technical inconvenience, it is a rupture of emotional connection. A phone call with a 40-minute round-trip delay is not a conversation in the normal sense. It is an exchange of monologues, no immediate response, no intonation reacting to what you just said, only waiting. Psychological studies of isolated environments, submarines, Antarctic winter rovers, simulated space missions, show predictable patterns. The first few months, usually a honeymoon period, everything is new, everyone tries their best. Then, the third quarter phenomenon. Roughly halfway to the destination and halfway back, the most difficult psychological period. Monotony accumulates. Interpersonal conflicts, inevitable in a closed group, intensify. Motivation drops. Homesickness. On Mars, this will be compounded by one more factor, the impossibility of returning early. Emergency evacuation from the ISS, a few hours. Emergency evacuation from Mars orbit, only during specific launch windows once every 26 months. From the Martian surface, even harder. This creates a psychological context of absolute irreversibility. You are there. You are there for a minimum of several years. There is no exit. This is not suffering. It is simply a reality that must be accepted and worked with. Research shows that people cope with this differently. Some find something liberating in it. Accepting irreversibility removes anxiety about control. Others gradually sink into what can be described as existential loneliness. Interpersonal conflicts in isolated groups are not exceptional events. They are the norm. On every Antarctic winter rover, on every long submarine expedition, interpersonal tension is one of the main operational problems. Not because people are bad, but because prolonged, forced proximity under stressful conditions is a test for any relationship. On a Mars mission, a crew of 4 to 6 people will spend 3 years in conditions where their lives literally depend on each other. This requires not just professional compatibility, it requires something deeper. The ability to forgive, the ability not to hold grudges, the ability to see in a colleague you have been seeing every day for 600 days something beyond irritating habits. Selecting people for such a mission is in some sense an even more complex task than developing the technical systems. Let us now talk about a less obvious but genuinely significant factor, about circadian rhythm and what happens when the daily cycle stops corresponding to biological clocks. On Earth, our circadian rhythm, a 24-hour biological cycle, is synchronized with sunlight. Morning light suppresses melatonin production, the sleep hormone, and triggers waking. The evening reduction in illumination triggers melatonin production and preparation for sleep. This rhythm regulates not only sleep, but metabolism, immune response, hormonal cycles, body temperature, cognitive functions. In an interplanetary spacecraft, there is no natural daily cycle. The sun is visible through the porthole, but it does not move across the sky. The light does not change. No sunrise, no sunset. Artificial lighting inside the ship can simulate a cycle, but it is not the same as natural light. On the ISS, astronauts observe about 16 sunrises and sunsets per day. The station orbits Earth every 90 minutes. This creates its own circadian rhythm problems. A 90-minute cycle is incompatible with a 24-hour biological one. Astronauts take melatonin and follow strict schedules to maintain approximation to a normal rhythm. Circadian rhythm disruption has real consequences: worsening sleep quality and duration, reduced cognitive functions, alertness, working memory, decision-making speed. Disruption of hormonal regulation. Cortisol, testosterone, insulin all depend on circadian rhythm. Immune response suppression. Elevated risk of metabolic disorders. For a long Mars mission, this means the crew will constantly live with some degree of circadian disruption. Not catastrophic, but chronic. For 3 years. Chronic sleep disruption, even moderate, accumulates. Cognitive deficits grow, reactions slow, judgments worsen. In conditions where every decision may have critical consequences, this is a serious operational risk. Let us now talk about something that connects all these physical challenges, about the concept of cumulative load and why individual factors combine into something greater than their sum. Each factor we have discussed, radiation, weightlessness, psychological stress, sleep disruption, altered microbiome, immune dysfunction, is a significant challenge in itself. But in a real mission, they act simultaneously and interact with each other. Stress suppresses the immune system through the hypothalamus-pituitary-adrenal axis, through cortisol. A suppressed immune system handles radiation-damaged DNA less effectively, because immune cells participate in eliminating cells with mutations. Sleep disruption amplifies the stress response and thereby further suppresses immunity. An altered microbiome changes metabolism and nutrient absorption, which affects the body's ability to repair radiation damage. Nutrient deficiencies from degrading food stores weaken the bone marrow's ability to produce immune cells. This is not simple addition of effects. This is non-linear interaction in which one factor amplifies another. A person simultaneously experiencing stress, sleep disruption, and immune dysfunction is significantly more vulnerable than someone experiencing only one of these factors. Medical models predicting health risks for astronauts must account for these interactions. But data to precisely calibrate such models is insufficient. There is no experience of 3-year space missions that would provide real data on long-term interactions of these factors. This is another kind of unknown unknowing. We know the interactions exist, but we do not know precisely how they add up under the conditions of a real long mission. Let us now talk about what the most underappreciated medical challenge of deep space may be, about the microbiome and what happens to the bacteria living in and around us under space conditions. The human body carries about 38 trillion bacterial cells, roughly as many as the body's own cells. This is the microbiome, a complex ecosystem living in the gut, on the skin, in the airways. The microbiome performs critical functions, helps digest food, produces vitamins, trains the immune system, protects against pathogens. Under space conditions, the microbiome changes. Studies on the ISS show changes in the composition of astronauts' intestinal microbiome. Diet in space differs from on Earth. This affects the microbiome. Stress affects it. Cortisol changes the intestinal environment. Radiation directly affects bacteria. Antibiotics that may be taken for infections change the composition even more dramatically. But the microbiome is not only inside us, it surrounds us, in living quarters, on surfaces, in air purification systems. Studies of the ISS microbiome showed that the composition of bacteria on the station's surfaces shifts over time. Some species absent initially appear. Some bacteria adapt to microgravity and radiation conditions. In 2020, several previously unknown bacterial species were identified in NASA archives, found only on the ISS. They were described as belonging to the genus Methylobacterium and were not dangerous. But the very fact of a specific microbial community developing, adapted to life on a space station, is interesting and requires monitoring. In the context of deep space, this becomes important. A closed system with recirculating air and water, limited disinfection capabilities, with people experiencing immune changes, is an environment where microbial communities can develop in unpredictable ways. Biosafety, maintaining a safe and stable microbial environment, is an underappreciated problem for long space missions. Let us now talk about a specific engineering challenge that flows directly from the biological vulnerabilities, about how much protection is really needed and why providing it is an engineering puzzle. Radiation requires shielding, but shielding has mass. Mass in space is launch cost. Every kilogram of payload placed on an interplanetary trajectory costs tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the rocket used. How much shielding is needed for meaningful protection from galactic cosmic rays? The problem is that GCRs are very high-energy particles, protons with energies of billions of electron volts. Ion nuclei accelerated to relativistic speeds. No practically achievable layer of passive shielding will stop them completely. When interacting with heavy materials, lead, steel, they produce cascades of secondary particles that can be dangerous in their own right. The best passive shielding, hydrogen-containing materials, water, polyethylene. Hydrogen has the smallest mass per nucleus and produces the least secondary radiation. A 50 centimeter layer of water around the living module would reduce the GCR dose by about half. But 50 centimeters of water around the entire living volume of the ship means dozens of tons of water added to the structure. This is not impossible. Water is needed on board in any case, for drinking, for oxygen production, for cooling. Water reserves can be placed around the living quarters, serving a dual function, resource and protection. This is a real engineering idea being considered for Mars missions. But it only partially solves the problem. Even with maximum practical water shielding, the crew on the way to Mars and back will receive a dose exceeding career limits under current standards. Solar energetic particles are a more acute problem. They are less energetic than GCRs and respond better to shielding, but their flux during major coronal mass ejections can be so intense that without shelter, an astronaut can receive a lethal dose within hours. The solution: a specially reinforced shelter inside the ship, thicker walls, additional shielding, where the crew must evacuate during solar flares. The shelter must be large enough for the entire crew for several hours. An early warning system for solar events, through solar monitoring sensors on board or from Earth data, provides several hours of advance warning for particles to accelerate toward the ship. But between Mars and Earth, the signal delay is 3 to 22 minutes. If a solar flare warning is transmitted from Earth, it may arrive too late. Onboard solar monitoring systems are a necessity. Let us now talk about the specific scenario that illustrates how all these problems combine into a single picture: a medical emergency aboard a ship heading to Mars. Imagine a crew member develops acute appendicitis. This is not rare. Approximately 1 in 1,000 people per year develops appendicitis. On Earth, this is routine surgery. In a hospital, 2 hours, general anesthesia, laparoscopy, a few days of recovery. In a ship traveling to Mars, 150 million kilometers from Earth, this is a potentially lethal situation. The crew are not surgeons, or are if medical training permits. Equipment is limited: no operating room, no intensive care unit, no full surgical instrument set, no blood supply. Sterility in a spacecraft is achievable but difficult. Weightlessness makes surgery significantly more complex. Fluids do not drain, blood forms spherical droplets, organs do not lie where they should under gravity. Evacuation is impossible, not within hours, not within days. The nearest hospital is months of travel away. Consultation with Earth, with a 10 to 20-minute one-way delay. A doctor on Earth gives instructions, they arrive after 20 minutes. The response to a question arrives after another 20 minutes. The situation develops in real time. Decisions must be made here. Appendicitis is a relatively manageable scenario. It can be treated with antibiotics, giving time, or an attempt can be made to perform surgery. Neither is a simple option under the conditions we described. What if it is not appendicitis? What if it is a stroke, a heart attack, a psychotic episode, severe trauma from an equipment accident? Each of these scenarios requires medical resources that do not exist in deep space. Each represents a real risk, not only to the affected crew member, but to the entire mission. Because the crew is small, and losing one person can critically impact the ability to perform tasks. This is one reason why concepts for telemedicine and remotely directed surgery are being developed for Mars missions. A surgical robot controlled by a surgeon on Earth. Technically, this is feasible with delays up to a few seconds. With a 20-minute delay, no. For Mars, this technology in its current form is inapplicable. Let us now talk about something that is simultaneously the most practically significant and most delicate topic, about death in deep space and what to do with it. On any long mission, there is a statistical likelihood of at least one crew member dying. Not necessarily from catastrophe, but simply from the combination of medical factors, accidents, and prolonged stress on the organism. What happens to the body of someone who dies in deep space? In orbit, the body is delivered to Earth with the crew or at the first opportunity. There have been no deaths on the ISS, but protocols exist. On the way to Mars, delivering the body to Earth immediately is impossible. The mission is not interrupted for this. Too expensive, too complex, may be technically impossible during certain trajectory phases. The body remains on board. NASA and other space agencies have developed protocols, called by various euphemisms, for this situation. The body must be preserved in conditions that do not allow decomposition, which in a sealed ship with a living crew is a hygienic and psychological necessity. The psychological impact of a crew member's death on those remaining in a confined space for years of flight is a separate, enormous problem. Grief, guilt, fear, in conditions where there is nowhere to go and nowhere to run, where every day you see the empty seat at the table, where you must continue working because there is no alternative. This is not a horror story. This is an operational reality that must be planned for. Let us now talk about what lies at the heart of all these specific problems, about the fundamental mismatch between what we can do as a civilization and what we are built to withstand as biological organisms. As a civilization, we can build rockets capable of carrying people to other planets. As biological organisms, we are not adapted to the environment of interplanetary space. Our civilization's technological progress far outpaces the biological evolution of our species. We can do things that our bodies cannot withstand without significant losses. This mismatch is addressed in three ways. First, technological compensation. Spacesuits, shielding, artificial gravity, medicine. Create around biology a technological buffer simulating Earth conditions as well as possible. This is what we are doing now and will be doing in the coming decades. Second, biological adaptation. Through genetic engineering, epigenetic modifications, synthetic biology, change biology so it better matches the conditions. This is a longer-term path with enormous ethical questions. Third, accept the mismatch and include it in the calculation. Fly knowing the price is real. That astronauts pay with their health. that this is acceptable within the framework of voluntary choice and social contract. Each of these paths involves decades of work. None of them is close to ready in its complete form, and yet people will fly. Because this too is part of who we are, the pull toward what is beyond the horizon, the desire to know, the desire to be present, the desire to touch what others only read about. This has been true for all polar explorers, for all pioneers, for all explorers who went where going was dangerous. Deep space is the next such place, only much farther, and much more honest in its hostility. Let us now talk about something that connects this to the widest possible perspective, about what the impossibility of surviving deep space without technology tells us about our relationship with Earth. Every specific challenge we have discussed tonight, radiation without the magnetosphere, vacuum without pressure, bone loss without gravity, immune dysfunction without the biosphere's microbial richness, psychological deterioration without the sensory diversity of a living world. Each is the reverse image of something Earth provides. The magnetosphere we never notice until it is absent. The atmosphere we never feel until it is gone. The gravity that calibrates every system in our bodies invisibly every moment of every day. The 24-hour cycle that synchronizes our biology with rhythms we did not choose and cannot consciously feel. The biosphere that makes oxygen, food, temperature regulation functions so fundamental that we have no word for their presence, only for their absence. Deep space removes all of this simultaneously, and the body built for a world with all of it begins to break down. This is not an argument against space exploration. It is an honest accounting of the price, a price that may be worth paying, for the science, for the resources, for the insurance a multi-planetary civilization represents against catastrophe on Earth, for the deep human need to explore and extend the horizon. But the price is real, and the body that pays it is yours, made of Earth, calibrated for Earth, given by 4 billion years of evolution on Earth, the only planet that has ever produced anything like you. Step outside tonight. Find Mars if it is visible, the reddish point that does not twinkle like the stars. Look at it. That is where we are going. Knowing the cost, going anyway. Let us talk about something that is both technically specific and rarely discussed in popular accounts of deep space. About what happens to food and water over the duration of a long mission, and why basic nutritional needs become a non-trivial engineering problem. On the ISS, food is delivered by regular cargo vehicles. If something runs out or spoils, the next ship brings replacements. This is a luxury that does not exist on the way to Mars. A Mars mission crew must take all food for 3 years with them from the start. This is an enormous mass. An adult consumes about 2.5 kilograms of dry food per day, roughly 2,000 to 3,000 kilocalories with appropriate proteins, fats, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals. Over 3 years per person, this is about 2,700 kilograms. For a crew of 6, about 16 tons of food alone. For comparison, SpaceX Starship in its Mars configuration is designed for a payload of about 100 tons to the Martian surface. 16 tons of food is a significant fraction of payload capacity. Beyond mass, there is shelf life. Food must be safe after 3 years. This is achievable: canned goods, freeze-dried products, specially processed packages. But the nutritional value of some products degrades over time. Vitamin C is unstable with long storage. Some amino acids break down. Radiation in space additionally accelerates the degradation of packaged food. Data from the ISS showed that after 18 to 24 months of storage, some products lose a significant fraction of nutritional value. sometimes 50% or more for specific vitamins. A 3-year supply on the way to Mars involves storage in conditions of radiation significantly more intense than on the ISS. This means astronauts may consume food with lower nutritional content than planned, which adds to already existing nutritional disruptions from stress and altered metabolism in weightlessness. The partial solution: growing food on board. Small hydroponic systems allowing leafy vegetables, lettuce, spinach, to be grown, providing small portions of fresh food. Experiments growing plants have been conducted on the ISS with positive results. The psychological effect of fresh vegetables exceeds their caloric contribution, but covering even 10 to 20% of the crew's caloric needs from onboard crops using current technologies is not feasible at reasonable mass and volume parameters. Water is a separate story. Closed cycle systems on the ISS recycle about 93% of water from atmospheric condensate, from urine, from breath. This is impressive. On the way to Mars, this figure will need to reach 98 to 99% and be maintained for 3 years. Every uncorrected percentage of water loss means additional kilograms of reserves that must be carried. And the recycling systems must work reliably for 3 years without the ability to replace components. These are significant reliability requirements. Let us now talk about a specific aspect that illuminates the depth of the biological challenge, about the twin study that gave us the most detailed data about long-term space effects on a human being. Scott Kelly spent 340 days on the ISS, from March 2015 to March 2016. His identical twin brother, Mark Kelly, also a former astronaut, remained on Earth and served as a control group of 1. Both provided blood, saliva, and other biological samples before, during, and after the mission. This was the most detailed medical study of a single astronaut in history. Results published in 2019 in Science, some were striking. Telomeres. Telomeres, the protective ends of chromosomes, became longer in Scott during spaceflight compared to Mark. This was unexpected. Shortening was anticipated from stress and radiation. After return, the telomeres rapidly shortened. The likely cause of elongation: regular exercise and dietary changes during flight. Gene expression. About 7% of Scott's genes changed their expression pattern during flight, switching on or off differently than in Mark. Most returned to normal after return. But about 7% of changes persisted 6 months after return. Cognitive functions. On several cognitive tests, Scott showed small decreases in performance after return compared to his brother. Reaction speed, accuracy. Some measures had not fully recovered 6 months later. Microbiome. The composition of Scott's intestinal microbiome changed significantly during flight and returned approximately to baseline after landing, but with persisting differences. Vision. Scott showed vision and brain structure changes related to fluid redistribution. This is data from 1 person. Statistically unrepresentative, but it is the only study of its kind, and it provides valuable concrete data about what happens to a human body over nearly a year in space. 340 days is roughly half the travel time to Mars, one way. A full Mars mission round trip, 3 years. We do not know what happens after 3 years. The data does not exist. Let us now talk about a topic that is both most practically significant and most rarely discussed publicly, about who should bear responsibility for the medical risks astronauts face and what the ethical limits of those risks are. Current radiation limits for NASA astronauts are based on a risk of no more than 3% elevated lifetime cancer mortality. This is an accepted compromise between the ability to do the work and health protection. But a Mars mission exceeds this limit. This means sending people to Mars within current standards is impossible without revising those standards. Who has the right to revise acceptable risk? NASA as employer, Congress as budget allocator, society as source of funding, or the astronauts themselves as professionals voluntarily accepting the risks of their profession? Astronauts sign contracts and undergo selection knowing their work is dangerous. But one thing is accepting the risk of death during rocket launch, acute, brief, with understandable probabilities. Another is accepting elevated cancer risk 20 to 30 years later, chronic, long-term, with a more complex causal relationship. Polar explorers, miners, military personnel all accept elevated health risks within their professions. Society recognizes this. It is compensated, financially, through social benefits, through recognition. Can astronauts make informed acceptance of Mars mission risk? Most astronauts, when asked this question, say yes. They understand the risks. They want to fly. They are prepared to accept the consequences. The ethical question, is this sufficient? Or do society and institutions have an obligation to protect astronauts from risks they themselves are willing to accept? This is a question without an obvious answer, but it is real and will become more urgent as actual Mars missions approach. Let us now talk about what it specifically means to be a person about to face all these factors, about the human experience of going to a place the body was never designed for. Astronauts who will fly to Mars, and they will fly sooner or later, will know everything we have discussed tonight. They will undergo medical evaluations that will show their bodies will inevitably change. They will know their vision may worsen, that their bones will become weaker, that their cancer risk will rise, that 3 years away from everything they know will change them psychologically as well as physically. And they will fly anyway. Not from ignorance, from something else. From the same quality that drove Amundsen to the South Pole, Columbus across the Atlantic, the first alpinists up Everest. A quality without a precise name, a mixture of curiosity, ambition, the desire to be first, the desire to know, the acceptance of mortality in exchange for the authenticity of experience. To be the first human on Mars. To stand on the red surface and look at a sky with 2 moons and a small, dim sun. To hear the whistle of wind carrying dust through a thin atmosphere. To understand that beneath your feet is another planet. Real, not a screen, not a simulation, real rock of another world. For this, 3 years of life irrevocably changed, a biological price that cannot be avoided. Some people consider this a reasonable trade. Let us now talk about what makes deep space particularly revealing, about what the impossibility of surviving it without technology tells us about our relationship with our own planet. Every specific challenge we have discussed tonight, radiation without the magnetosphere, vacuum without pressure, bone loss without gravity, immune dysfunction without the biosphere's microbial richness, circadian disruption without the sun's 24-hour cycle, psychological deterioration without the sensory diversity of a living world. Each is the reverse image of something Earth silently provides. The magnetosphere we never notice. The atmosphere we never feel as a weight. The gravity that calibrates every system in our bodies without our awareness. The 24-hour cycle that synchronizes our biology with rhythms we never chose. The biosphere that produces oxygen, food, temperature regulation. Functions so fundamental that we have no word for their presence, only for their absence. Deep space takes all of this away simultaneously, and the body that was built for a world with all of it begins to fail. This is not pessimism. It is physics and biology speaking directly. It is also, in a certain sense, a form of gratitude made visible. The Earth's magnetic field, the atmospheric pressure, the gravity, the biosphere. These are gifts, not intended gifts, not designed, but gifts in the functional sense. They are what we have and what we need, given to us by the same planetary and biological processes that produced us. We only see them fully when we leave. Deep space is honest about this in a way that everyday life on Earth is not. Let us now talk about a comparison that helps place the scale of the challenge, about the most extreme environments humans have inhabited on Earth, and how deep space differs from them fundamentally rather than just in degree. The most extreme permanent human settlements on Earth are in Antarctica. Research stations, McMurdo, Amundsen Scott at the South Pole, Russia's Vostok, operate year-round with wintering crews. Vostok Station. Average annual temperature of -55 degrees Celsius. Minimum recorded temperature -89.2 degrees. Altitude 3,488 meters. Thin air. Oxygen content about 70% of normal. Polar night for several months. In winter, evacuation is essentially impossible. Aircraft don't fly at temperatures below about -50. These are genuinely extreme conditions. Antarctic winter overs are psychologically and physically testing. Data from Antarctic stations on the psychology of isolation is one of the most important sources for planning space missions. But even Antarctica is Earth. There is an atmosphere. There is gravity at 1 g. No cosmic radiation, no vacuum, no fluid redistribution in the body, no immune suppression from weightlessness, no bone loss. And evacuation is possible. Difficult, dangerous, but possible. Polar aircraft fly when temperatures rise. Medical evacuations from Antarctic stations have occurred. Deep space differs from the most extreme environment on Earth not merely in degree, but in category. This distinction matters because all our data on how people cope with prolonged isolation was obtained on Earth or in low orbit. We extrapolate to deep space. The extrapolation may be wrong. Let us now talk about the analog missions, simulations of space missions on Earth, and what they actually showed about the psychological side. Mars 500, an experiment conducted in Moscow in 2010 to 2011. 6 people spent 520 days in a sealed facility simulating an interplanetary spacecraft and Mars base. No actual flight, just a ground simulation. Results showed several important things. Declining physical activity. Despite the availability of exercise equipment, most participants gradually reduced their physical activity in the second half of the mission. Monotony, absence of external motivation, accumulating fatigue, all worked against maintaining a routine. Sleep disturbances. 2 of the 6 participants developed significant sleep disruptions. Extended sleep duration, shifted circadian rhythm, reduced daytime activity. This resembled symptoms of depression or seasonal affective disorder. Psychological distance from Earth. Communication with the simulated Earth gradually decreased. Participants initiated contact less, shared less personal information. Psychological withdrawal from the outside world. Interpersonal dynamics. The group divided into subgroups. Some crew members interacted significantly less by the end of the mission. No overt conflicts, but decreased social interaction within the group was noticeable. The absence of real risk and real stakes made Mars 500 fundamentally less stressful than an actual mission. Participants knew they could exit at any moment, that Earth was nearby, that there was no danger. Despite this, disruptions developed. In a real Mars mission, the stakes are incomparably higher. Real danger, real irreversibility, real distance. Psychological stress will be significantly greater. HI-Cs, Hawaii Space Exploration Analog and Simulation. A series of simulated Mars missions on the Hawaiian volcano Mauna Loa. crews of 4 to 6 people lived in a dome structure at 2,500 meters altitude in isolation for several months to a year. Communication with simulated Earth had an artificial delay of 20 minutes. HI-Cs showed that even in ground simulation, team cohesion and psychological state varied significantly between crews. Conflicts, declining motivation, difficulty maintaining professional interaction standards. Significantly, crew composition turned out to be far more important to mission outcome than individual characteristics of each member. Crews with good group dynamics performed better than crews with technically stronger but interpersonally less compatible people. This is an important finding. When selecting a crew for a Mars mission, interpersonal compatibility is no less important than individual professional qualifications. Let us now talk about what specific measurements and experiments planned for near-future missions will tell us about the unknowns we have been discussing. The Artemis program returning humans to the Moon is the most important near-term data-gathering opportunity for Mars mission planning. Not just technically, but medically. The Moon offers a unique intermediate environment. It is 3 days from Earth, close enough for real emergency evacuation if needed. Communication delay is 1.3 seconds. Real-time telemedicine is possible. Gravity is 1/6 g. Partial gravity, different from both weightlessness and Earth normal, and different from Mars's 0.38 g. Radiation environment is similar to interplanetary space, about 380 millisieverts per year. Staying on the Moon for weeks, then months, will give us something we currently lack. Data on what 1/6 g does to the human body over extended periods. All our long-duration data comes from the ISS, from zero gravity. Mars missions would involve 0.38 g. The Moon at 1/6 g is a step between zero gravity and Mars gravity that we have never studied in long-duration human presence. Every Artemis surface mission will carry medical monitoring equipment. Every crew member will be a participant in the most important human physiology study of the decade. The data will directly inform the planning of every subsequent deep space mission. Additionally, the Moon will be our first test of regolith dust management at scale with human presence. Lunar dust is an aggressive substance, sharp, electrostatically charged, fine, potentially toxic with long-term inhalation. Managing it with lunar suits, airlocks, and habitat design will teach us things that cannot be learned in simulation. Mars dust is different in composition, but the engineering lessons about dust management will translate. Let us now talk about a topic that is rarely mentioned in discussions of deep space survival, but becomes critical for any mission beyond about 3 years in duration, about the pharmacological challenges of long-duration spaceflight. A Mars mission crew will need a comprehensive pharmacy, antibiotics for bacterial infections, antivirals for herpes reactivation and other viral conditions, sleep aids for circadian disruption, anxiolytics for psychological crisis situations, analgesics for pain management, antiemetics for space motion sickness, medications for bone density, bisphosphonates, medications for cardiovascular management, anticoagulants if venous thrombosis occurs, steroids for allergic reactions or shock, local anesthetics and surgical supplies. Each medication has a shelf life. Over 3 years in the radiation environment of interplanetary space, medications degrade faster than on Earth. Radiation breaks down complex organic molecules. A medication that is fully effective at launch may be partially degraded by the time it is needed, 18 months into the mission. Some medications degrade into harmless, inactive compounds. They simply become less effective. Others degrade into potentially toxic byproducts. Knowing which is which for every medication in the pharmacy, and understanding the degradation rates in the specific radiation environment of the mission, is a non-trivial pharmaceutical challenge. Beyond degradation, drug interactions. A crew member who is already taking bisphosphonates for bone loss and melatonin for sleep regulation, and then develops a bacterial infection requiring antibiotics, the interaction profile of 3 or 4 medications taken simultaneously must be known and managed. In a small crew with no pharmacist, with limited diagnostic capability, this requires either pre-planned protocols or very capable onboard medical AI. And some medications simply work differently in microgravity. Drug absorption from the gastrointestinal tract changes in weightlessness. Fluid redistribution changes the volume of distribution for water-soluble drugs. Kidney function changes affect excretion rates. A drug dosed to achieve therapeutic blood levels on Earth may achieve different levels in space with the same dose. This is known but not well quantified. The ISS has provided some data on this, but not enough to characterize the effect for all relevant medications under all relevant conditions. Let us now talk about the specific question of what happens to dental health on a long mission, because this is one of the most practically significant and least glamorous medical challenges of deep space. Dental problems are among the most common medical issues in isolated populations. In Antarctic winter overstudies, dental pain has been one of the most frequent complaints requiring medical intervention. In space, the same pattern. Astronauts on long ISS missions have experienced dental issues. On a 3-year Mars mission, the statistical probability of at least one crew member developing a significant dental problem is high. What options exist for managing a serious dental problem on a spacecraft headed to Mars? Emergency extraction, possible but requires training and appropriate equipment. A prepared crew member with dental training can perform an extraction under local anesthesia. But if the problem is not extraction suitable, a cracked crown, an abscessed tooth requiring root canal treatment, a broken filling requiring rebuilding, the capabilities are much more limited. Root canal therapy on a spacecraft requires specific instruments, specific materials, significant skill, and reasonable lighting and access to the oral cavity in question. In weightlessness, with fluids behaving differently, with the patient unable to spit normally, and with the operator in zero gravity trying to maintain instrument control, this is significantly harder than the same procedure in a dental chair. Preventive dental care, therefore, takes on enormous importance for Mars missions. Every crew member's dental status must be as close to perfect as possible at departure. Every existing dental problem must be addressed before launch. Every filling, every crown, every potential issue resolved. This is already standard practice for astronauts, but will need to be even more rigorous for multi-year missions. Let us now talk about something that is fundamental but underexplored, about how the experience of deep space specifically changes a person's relationship with their own body. On Earth, most people have a relatively distant relationship with their own body. You exercise it, feed it, sleep in it, but mostly it runs in the background, not demanding attention, not reminding you of its existence. The body is the instrument you live in, not usually the object of conscious attention from moment to moment. In deep space, the body becomes the primary object of attention in a way that nothing in ordinary life prepares you for. Every morning medical check, blood pressure, heart rate, sleep quality rating, cognitive tests, bone density measurements when available, urine analysis. You are monitoring your own physical decline in real time with instruments that cannot lie to you. You know your bone density number, you know how your cognitive test scores are trending. You know your radiation dose to date. You know how your immune markers are shifting. This intimate knowledge of your own body's deterioration, quantified, tracked, inescapable, is a psychological experience without earthly parallel. Some astronauts describe this as ultimately positive, a forced attention to physical health that produces habits and awareness they carry back to civilian life. A relationship with their own body more honest and more attentive than most people ever develop. Others describe it as a source of anxiety, knowing that you are degrading, watching the numbers change, aware of risks that accumulate but cannot be prevented. Both responses are real. Both are understandable. Neither is pathological. This relationship with bodily vulnerability, forced by the instruments and the environment, is one of the most distinctly human aspects of deep space experience. It is what makes astronauts not just technicians executing a mission, but people living inside a biological system under stress. People who come back changed not only by the experience of having been elsewhere, but by the experience of having watched their own bodies respond to elsewhere. Let us now talk about the long view, about what the history of human exploration tells us about how we have consistently underestimated both the costs and the value of going somewhere new. The first transatlantic voyages had mortality rates that by modern standards would be considered unacceptable. Sometimes 50% or more of a crew lost to scurvy, storms, disease, accident. This was known. Crews went anyway. They went because the potential, new trade routes, new lands, new resources, new knowledge, was judged to outweigh the cost. The first ascent of high mountains had high mortality. The first Antarctic expeditions had high mortality. The first aviation attempts had high mortality. Each time there was a period in which the cost was genuine and high and the technology was insufficient and people went anyway, followed by a period of learning, of improving technology, of reducing cost, of accumulating the knowledge that eventually made the same journey routine. We are at the beginning of this process with deep space. The costs are genuine and significant. The technology is insufficient to fully protect the people who go. This is not a reason not to go. History suggests going anyway, learning from the experience, and iterating toward better solutions. It is, however, a reason to be honest about the costs, to acknowledge what is not known, to plan as carefully as possible given that knowledge, to select people who understand what they are accepting, and to maintain the commitment to improve, mission by mission, decade by decade, until what is currently dangerous becomes routine. This is the trajectory of every genuinely new frontier that humanity has crossed. Deep space is not different, it is just farther, and more honest about its hostility than anywhere we have been before. Let us talk about something that connects the physical challenges of deep space to a broader question about the nature of human adaptation, about whether there are individuals who are genuinely better suited to the demands of interplanetary travel, and what research tells us about this. The selection of astronauts has always involved filtering for physical and psychological robustness. But the specific demands of a 3-year Mars mission are different enough from previous mission profiles that the selection criteria may need to evolve. Radiation resistance varies between individuals. Some of this variation is genetic. Specific variants in genes involved in DNA repair, BRCA1, BRCA2, ATM, and others, affect how efficiently cells repair radiation-induced DNA damage. People with certain combinations of these variants may accumulate fewer long-term mutations at the same radiation dose. This is already being studied. NASA funds research into the genetic determinants of radiation sensitivity as part of its Human Research Program. The goal is not to discriminate in selection, but to better predict individual risk, so that a crew member with high genetic radiation sensitivity is not placed on the highest radiation exposure mission role. Similarly, bone loss rates vary between individuals. Some people lose bone faster than others in weightlessness, independent of their exercise habits. Some of this variation is also genetic, related to variants in genes controlling bone metabolism, vitamin D processing, and calcium handling. Identifying individuals with genetically lower rates of bone loss would be valuable for mission crew selection. Psychological resilience under prolonged isolation is less clearly genetic, but has a substantial heritable component. Twin studies of responses to stress, to isolation, to monotony show significant genetic contributions to individual differences. The specific genes involved are less well characterized than those for radiation sensitivity, but the heritability is real. The implication? Future astronaut selection for deep space missions may involve genetic screening as one component of a comprehensive risk profile. Not to exclude anyone on the basis of genetics, but to match individuals to missions and roles based on their risk profiles, just as current selection matches physical capabilities to mission demands. This raises ethical questions about genetic discrimination in employment that are already being navigated in other medical contexts: insurance, pre-employment screening, carrier status for hereditary diseases. Space medicine is approaching this territory from the specific direction of occupational risk management for a small group of volunteers. Let us now talk about a specific and underappreciated aspect of the life support challenge, about fire in space, and why it represents one of the most acutely dangerous scenarios for a deep space crew. Fire on Earth behaves in ways we have built intuitions about through a lifetime of experience. Flames rise because hot gases are less dense and rise in Earth's gravity. The shape of a flame, narrow at the base, wide at the top, pointing upward, reflects this convective flow. The spread of fire follows predictable patterns driven by convection. In microgravity, none of this holds. Without gravity-driven convection, there is no buoyancy. Hot gases do not rise. Flames in microgravity form spherical or near-spherical shapes, a globe of burning gas with no preferred direction. Spherical flames burn differently. They consume oxygen from all directions equally. They spread differently. They produce different combustion products, more carbon monoxide relative to carbon dioxide in some cases, because the combustion chemistry is affected by the absence of convective mixing. Detecting fire in microgravity is harder. Smoke particles do not rise through the air to ceiling-mounted detectors. They spread omnidirectionally in all directions. Smoke detectors in microgravity must be designed to draw air through them actively rather than relying on convective flow. Extinguishing fire in microgravity is harder. Water discharged from a spray nozzle does not disperse as on Earth. Surface tension causes water to form spherical droplets rather than a mist. Carbon dioxide extinguishers can be effective, but the CO2 does not disperse away from the fire site by convection. It can accumulate in a pocket around the extinguisher user, creating an asphyxiation hazard. The ISS has had several incidents involving fire or fire-adjacent situations. Small electrical fires, a chemical fire from a solid oxygen generator, smoke events. Each was controlled. But each demonstrated that fire in a sealed habitat is an acute existential threat. The habitat is the crew's only air supply. Any significant combustion can render it uninhabitable. On a Mars mission spacecraft, a fire that cannot be controlled means loss of the vehicle. There is no nearby rescue. The crew must extinguish any fire immediately and completely. Fire suppression systems for deep space missions are an active area of development. Total flooding systems, which fill a compartment with inert gas to suppress combustion, are one approach, but they require the crew to evacuate the compartment first and to ensure the gas does not spread to crew quarters. Fine water mist systems are being investigated. Materials selection. Choosing interior finishes and fabrics that are inherently flame-resistant reduces the fuel available to any incipient fire. The deeper point. In deep space, every hazard that on Earth is serious but survivable becomes potentially mission-ending. Fire on Earth, dangerous, but most buildings are abandoned rather than people dying in them. Fire in a sealed spacecraft hundreds of millions of kilometers from any alternative shelter, categorically different. Let us now talk about the specific challenge of maintaining the spacecraft itself over a 3-year mission, about mechanical wear, materials degradation, and the engineering of reliability at timescales that have no precedent in crewed spaceflight. The longest continuous crewed mission in history was Valery Polyakov's 437-day stay on Mir in 1994 to 1995. A Mars mission would be roughly twice this duration for the outbound journey alone, and 3 times or more for the total mission. Spacecraft are not designed to last forever. They are designed to specific design lives, operational periods within which components are expected to function within their specified parameters. Parts wear, lubricants degrade, seals lose elasticity, electronics accumulate radiation damage, optical surfaces accumulate microcontamination, polymer materials become brittle under UV and radiation exposure. On the ISS, degrading or failed components are replaced by cargo shipments. When a urine processing pump fails, a replacement is sent up. When an oxygen generator needs a new filter cartridge, it arrives. The ISS is serviced continuously, maintained by a supply chain that reaches back to Earth. A Mars mission carries everything it will need for 3 years. If a critical component fails and the replacement was not packed, there is no replacement. The crew must either repair the original, fabricate an alternative, or work without that capability. This creates specific engineering requirements. Redundancy, carrying 2 or more of every critical component. Repairability, designing components so they can be disassembled and repaired with tools available on board. Manufacturability, carrying materials and fabrication capability. 3D printing of both plastics and metals is actively being considered to make simple replacement parts from raw stock. In-space additive manufacturing, 3D printing, has been demonstrated on the ISS. A device called Made in Space printed the first objects in microgravity in 2014. Subsequent systems have demonstrated printing of a range of polymer and composite materials. Metal printing in microgravity is more technically challenging, but is being pursued. A Mars mission carrying a capable in-space manufacturing facility, able to print plastic, composite and metal components from raw feedstock, would have a dramatically expanded ability to respond to unexpected failures. The feedstock takes up space and mass, but the flexibility it provides is potentially mission critical. This is not science fiction, it is near-term technology. The question is not whether it is possible, but whether it will be sufficiently mature and reliable to depend on for a mission where the alternative to successful repair is potentially mission failure. Let us now talk about the specific challenge of maintaining cognitive performance under the cumulative load of all the stressors we have discussed, about what the neuroscience of performance degradation tells us about how a Mars crew would function after a year or 2 of deep space. Cognitive performance is not binary. Either you can do the work or you cannot. It degrades gradually in ways that the person experiencing the degradation often cannot accurately self-assess. This is one of the most concerning aspects of the cognitive effects of deep space, the impairment of self-monitoring. Sleep deprivation research, one of the most extensively studied stressors, shows consistently that people who are sleep deprived systematically underestimate their own impairment. They feel they are performing normally. They feel alert. Objective testing reveals significant decrements in reaction time, working memory, decision quality, and attention. The person themselves does not notice. The same pattern appears in studies of prolonged isolation, of mild hypoxia, of certain dietary deficiencies. The awareness of one's own impairment is itself impaired. In a Mars mission context, this is an operational safety problem. A crew member who has been mildly impaired by cumulative stress and radiation and sleep disruption for 18 months may make errors in procedures that would seem obvious in retrospect. But at the time, the crew member felt fine and assessed their own performance as adequate. This is why external monitoring, both automated biometric monitoring and peer assessment protocols, becomes critical in deep space. Crew members cannot be the sole assessors of their own fitness to perform. Systems that objectively monitor cognitive performance and flag declining trends, and crew norms that allow open discussion of performance concerns without stigma, are essential safety structures. Developing these cultural norms is not trivial. The type of people selected to be astronauts, high-achieving, competitive, accustomed to being competent, may be the least psychologically comfortable with acknowledging performance decline. The organizational culture of space agencies has historically emphasized competence and self-sufficiency in ways that can make admitting impairment feel threatening to professional identity. This is a human factors problem as much as a technical one. Designing a crew culture that makes honest performance self-assessment and peer assessment psychologically safe is part of the mission planning challenge. Let us now talk about the specific connection between deep space survival challenges and the emerging field of longevity medicine, about the ways in which research into human performance in deep space overlaps with research into aging. The physiological effects of long-term spaceflight resemble, in accelerated form, many of the physiological effects of aging: bone density loss, muscle atrophy, cardiovascular deconditioning, immune system changes, cognitive decline. The parallels are not coincidental. They share underlying biological mechanisms. In weightlessness, bone loss occurs because the absence of mechanical loading removes the signal that normally tells osteoblasts to maintain bone density. In aging, bone loss occurs partly because hormonal changes and reduced physical activity reduce the same mechanical loading signals. Different proximate cause, same downstream biology. Similarly, for muscle, disuse atrophy in weightlessness and sarcopenia in aging share common molecular pathways. The mTOR signaling pathway, central to muscle protein synthesis, is suppressed in both conditions by related mechanisms. Immune aging, immunosenescence, shares features with the immune changes observed in astronauts: reduced NK cell activity, impaired T cell responses, increased viral reactivation. The difference is timescale. What takes decades in normal aging takes months in space. This convergence means that research investments in one area benefit the other. Interventions developed to counter spaceflight-induced bone loss, bisphosphonates, exercise protocols, nutritional supplements, have direct application to osteoporosis management in elderly populations on Earth. Interventions developed to counter immunosenescence in aging populations, exercise, dietary interventions, candidate pharmaceuticals, have potential application to immune support in space. Several longevity biotechnology companies are explicitly collaborating with space medicine researchers for this reason. The overlap in biology makes the research mutually reinforcing. A drug that prevents muscle loss in astronauts and also works in the elderly is commercially valuable in both markets, which creates funding incentives that purely academic space medicine research often lacks. This is one of the more hopeful aspects of the deep space challenge. The problems it poses are not purely academic. They matter for a much larger population than the few dozen people who will travel to Mars. Solutions developed for Mars will benefit millions on Earth. Let us now talk about what happens in the brain specifically during long-term space missions, in more detail than we have covered, because the neuroscience here is both disturbing and fascinating. The HDBR studies, head-down bed rest studies, a terrestrial analogue for weightlessness that simulates the fluid shift to the head by having subjects lie with their head tilted downward for weeks, have illuminated some of what happens to the brain during spaceflight without the confounding effects of radiation and other space-specific factors. Structural MRI studies of astronauts before and after ISS missions, particularly the detailed studies published between 2016 and 2020, showed several consistent findings. narrowing of the sulci, the grooves between brain folds, in the frontal and parietal lobes. This appears to result from the upward shift of cerebrospinal fluid compressing the brain against the skull. In some cases, this narrowing was associated with mild edema, swelling of brain tissue. Upward displacement of the brain within the skull. Because fluid has shifted cephalad toward the head, the entire brain is pushed upward within the cranial vault. The space between the top of the brain and the inner surface of the skull narrows. The space at the bottom of the brain increases. Changes in white matter integrity, measured through diffusion tensor imaging, which is sensitive to the microstructural organization of white matter tracts. Some astronauts showed changes in fractional anisotropy, a measure of white matter integrity, in specific tracts. Whether these represent adaptive reorganization or pathological damage is debated. Changes in cortical thickness, the outer grey matter layer, in specific regions. Some regions showed thinning, others showed apparent thickening. The interpretation is complex. These structural changes were accompanied in some astronauts by changes in cognitive performance on standardized tests, particularly in domains of spatial orientation, processing speed, and working memory. The critical question is reversibility. Some changes appear to reverse within months of return to Earth, others persist. Whether the persisting changes represent permanent remodeling, the brain finding a new structural equilibrium after the spaceflight experience, or ongoing pathological processes is not yet known. For a 3-year mission, this is concerning. 18 months of structural change, followed by 18 more months of the same environment before the brain can begin reversing. What the cumulative effect of 3 years of fluid shift, radiation exposure, and the associated neurological challenges will be, we do not know. It is one of the most important unknowns in deep space medicine. Let us now talk about the specific experience of returning to Earth after a long mission, about what homecoming from deep space will actually look like. ISS astronauts returning from 6-month missions are physically impaired. They cannot walk unassisted in the first minutes after landing. They require help to exit the Soyuz capsule. In the early hours, they are carried, supported, managed by medical teams. Their cardiovascular system has lost the ability to maintain blood pressure in an upright position. They faint if they stand too quickly. Their muscles are not strong enough to manage their own body weight against Earth's gravity. Their vestibular system is confused by the return of gravitational signals. Over days and weeks, this improves. Cardiovascular function recovers. Muscle function improves with physical therapy. Balance improves as the vestibular system recalibrates. Bone density begins to recover, but takes months to years to fully restore. For a 3-year Mars mission, the same picture applies, but more severely and over a longer recovery period. After 3 years of partial gravity and weightlessness combined, 6 months in weightlessness going, 18 months in 0.38 g on Mars, 6 months in weightlessness returning, the returning crew members will be significantly more debilitated at landing than any ISS returnee. Current ISS returnees need several weeks of intensive rehabilitation before they are functioning normally. Mars returnees may need months. In the extreme case, where bone loss and muscle atrophy have been worse than predicted, some returnees may not fully recover to their pre-mission physical capacity. This is not a small consideration. These are people who will come back to Earth changed by what they experienced, not just psychologically, but physically, in their bodies, permanently or semi-permanently. They will have paid a price in their biological capital that cannot be fully repaid. And many of them, given the chance, would go again. Because this is who we are. Let us now talk about the specific long-term trajectory of solving these problems, about what progress might look like over the next 50 years if the motivation and resources are sustained. The 1960s. No human had ever been in space. Within a decade, humans walked on the moon. The pace of learning and capability development was extraordinary because the motivation, geopolitical competition, national will, concentrated resources, was extraordinary. The pace slowed in the decades after Apollo, not because the problems were harder, because the motivation and resources were not sustained at the same level. Deep space medicine will likely follow a similar pattern. A surge in knowledge and capability during the Artemis era as humans return to and sustain presence near the Moon. Data accumulation that drives targeted research, specific radiation countermeasures, specific bone loss interventions, specific cognitive support systems, tested in the lunar environment before Mars. By 2040 or 2050, if programs are sustained, we will know considerably more about long-term human physiology in partial gravity environments than we know today. We will have data from weeks and then months of human presence on and around the Moon. We will have tested specific interventions and know which ones work. This does not guarantee that a Mars mission will be safe by 2050, but it likely means that specific risks will be better quantified and that specific countermeasures will be better characterized. The trajectory of making the unprecedented routine takes time. Transatlantic flight went from impossible to experimental to dangerous to commercial to routine over about 4 decades. Deep space will take longer because the challenges are harder and the environment less forgiving. But the trajectory is the same. We are at the very beginning, the experimental, dangerous phase. The pioneers who fly in this era will accept the costs that come with being first. The generations who follow will benefit from what the first ones learned and paid for. This is the human pattern. It has been the human pattern every time we have gone somewhere genuinely new. Deep space is just the newest place. Let us talk about something that has not yet come up, about the specific challenge of maintaining mental health during the long journey back from Mars, which may, in some ways, be psychologically harder than the journey out. The outbound journey has a destination. Mars is ahead, growing slowly in the viewport, becoming more real day by day, month by month. There is something to look forward to. The purpose of the journey is ahead of you. Even in the monotony of months of travel, the psychological orientation is forward. The return journey is different. Mars has been experienced. The crew has done what they came to do. Whatever the scientific program was, the surface exploration, the samples collected, the experiments run. The mission's primary purpose has been fulfilled, and now they face 6 to 9 more months in a confined spacecraft traveling away from the place they just left toward a home that has continued without them for 3 years. The psychological orientation shifts. Instead of anticipation, retrospection. Instead of looking forward, looking back. The crew members will be processing everything that happened on the surface, the successes, the failures, any deaths or injuries or medical events, the interpersonal dynamics of 18 months at close quarters on another planet. They will be doing this processing in the same confined spacecraft, with the same small group of colleagues, with the same background hum of life support systems, and the same 40-minute communication delay to Earth. At the same time, their bodies are again in weightlessness, and all the physiological deconditioning that was arrested or partially reversed by the Martian gravity begins again. Bones that had stabilized at 0.38 g are again losing density. Muscles that had partially recovered are again atrophying. The vestibular system that had recalibrated to Martian gravity must now recalibrate again to weightlessness. 3 months into the return journey, with 3 to 6 months still ahead, this period represents what isolation psychologists might call the third quarter phenomenon. The mission's excitement is behind them. The destination is still far. The physical cost is accumulating again. The psychological support systems developed during outbound and surface phases must sustain a crew that has every reason to feel that the interesting part is over. This is not hypothetical. Long-duration analog mission studies, including some Antarctic winter-over programs, consistently show that the period after the mission's primary goals have been achieved, when the team must sustain itself through the completion of the operational end of the deployment, is psychologically one of the most difficult. Planning for this specifically, with dedicated psychological support programs, with structured activities that create purpose and forward orientation during the return journey, with explicit acknowledgement and preparation for the post-primary mission psychological phase, is part of what distinguishes serious Mars mission planning from optimistic sketches. Let us now talk about something that represents perhaps the most fundamental uncertainty in all of deep space medicine, about what we simply do not know and cannot know until people actually go. There is a category of medical risk that can be characterized as unknown unknowns. Not the risks we know about and have quantified, and not even the risks we know we don't know about, but risks that we don't know we don't know. Every time humans have entered a genuinely new environment, there have been medical consequences that were not anticipated. Not because the planners were careless, but because the environment was genuinely new, and genuinely new environments produce genuinely novel biological responses. The first divers to go deep found decompression sickness, a consequence of dissolved nitrogen in blood that was not predicted from first principles by the medical understanding of the time. The first mountaineers to spend extended time at altitude found altitude sickness and high-altitude cerebral edema, not predicted from the known physiology of hypoxia at that time. The first people to work with radioactive materials found cancers and radiation burns and aplastic anemia, not predicted before the biological effects of ionizing radiation were characterized. Each time, a genuinely novel environment revealed a genuinely novel medical consequence that prior understanding did not fully anticipate. Deep space is a more genuinely novel environment than any of these. It combines factors that have never been combined in any human experience. Sustained microgravity, or partial gravity, sustained galactic cosmic ray exposure at unshielded levels, confined multi-year isolation, extreme distance from any medical support. The combination of these factors may produce biological effects that are not simply the sum of what we know about each factor in isolation. What might these be? By definition, we cannot fully anticipate them, but areas where complex interactions might produce unanticipated effects include the interaction of radiation damage with immune-suppressed DNA repair, the interaction of fluid shift with radiation-induced changes in cerebrospinal fluid dynamics, the interaction of microbiome disruption with the immune changes of weightlessness in creating susceptibility to novel infectious disease presentations, the interaction of psychological stress with radiation-induced neurological changes. The history of medicine in novel environments counsels humility here. The first humans to spend months in deep space will be pioneers not only in exploration but in medicine. They will be the data from which the next generation of Mars mission planning will be built. This is uncomfortable but honest. The first people to go will face risks that cannot be fully characterized in advance. They will pay some of those risks. And what they experience, whatever it is, will inform the design of every subsequent mission. Let us now talk about what the totality of these challenges means for the design philosophy of deep space missions, about what principles should guide the approach to an undertaking of this complexity and risk. The first principle is honesty about what is known and what is not. Overstating confidence in our ability to protect crews, asserting that we have solutions to problems that we have only partial solutions to, creates a false sense of security that can lead to under-preparation. Every deep space mission plan should be accompanied by an honest accounting of the residual risks that remain after all countermeasures are applied. The second principle is redundancy at every level. Not just engineering redundancy, backup systems for life support, for propulsion, for communication, but biological and medical redundancy. Every mission-critical skill must be held by at least 2 crew members. Every critical medication must have backup supplies. Every medical protocol must have a fallback. The third principle is adaptability. The mission will not go exactly as planned. Something will fail. Someone will get sick. An expected supply will be depleted faster than predicted. The mission design must assume deviation from plan and build in the capacity to adapt, in terms of crew training, in terms of onboard decision-making authority, in terms of available resources. The fourth principle is learning. Every mission, successful or not, must be designed to extract the maximum possible medical and operational knowledge for the benefit of subsequent missions. The individual mission is important in itself, but it is also a data point in the long process of making deep space accessible. The monitoring systems, the data collection, the post-mission analysis, these must be treated as a scientific program of the highest priority, not as an afterthought. The fifth principle, and perhaps the most important, is respect for the people who go. They are not expendable. They are not instruments of policy or national prestige. They are human beings who have chosen to accept extraordinary risks in exchange for the chance to do something no one has done before. Their well-being, before, during, and after the mission, is a first-order priority, not a constraint to be optimized against mission objectives. These principles are not abstract. They translate into specific design choices, crew sizes that allow adequate redundancy of skills, training programs of sufficient depth, medical inventories of sufficient comprehensiveness, monitoring systems of sufficient sensitivity, post-mission care of sufficient duration and quality. Let us now talk about what all of this looks like from the perspective of the crew, about what a realistic day in the life of the first Mars mission might actually look like, combining all the challenges we have discussed. You wake to the alarm of the lighting system, shifting from night mode to morning simulation. The light is warm and yellow, designed to approximate sunrise on Earth and trigger the cortisol response that promotes waking. You have been asleep about 7 hours. The sleep tracker on your wrist tells you this, along with your average heart rate during sleep and your respiratory rate. You slept well by the standards of the mission, which means you woke twice, and the sleep quality score is 74 out of 100. Morning medical check, 2 minutes. Blood pressure in both arms. A significant difference between sides could indicate vascular issues. Heart rate, respiratory rate, temperature. You enter your subjective wellness rating on a scale of 1 to 10. 7 today. Cognitive test. A 2-minute reaction time and working memory exercise. Your score is slightly below your personal baseline, not by enough to flag the system, but you notice it. Breakfast. The food is technically adequate. The nutritional content is maintained, the calories are right. But after 16 months, you have eaten every item in the menu rotation many times. The variety in the menu system means mathematically you should not repeat a meal more than once every 30 days. In practice, your palate has started finding all of them flat and indistinguishable. You eat mechanically. You think about coffee on Earth, real coffee, hot, with the smell of it filling a room. Morning communications window. A package of messages from Earth arrived while you slept, transmitted during the optimal communications window. A personal message from your family, recorded, not live, because the 20-minute one-way delay makes real-time conversation essentially impossible. You watch it. Your daughter has grown noticeably. She is learning to read. She holds up a drawing she made. It is a rocket. You make a note to record a response to send in the next transmission window. Work begins. Today's primary task is maintenance of the CO2 scrubbing system, a filter cartridge replacement that is scheduled every 42 days. In principle, this is a 45-minute job. In practice, it takes 90 minutes because one of the fasteners has developed thread wear and requires careful extraction rather than simple removal. You document the issue. You install the replacement cartridge. You note that the spare supply of this specific fastener type is now reduced to 4 units and flag this for the inventory management system. Midday exercise, 2.5 hours. This is the most important work you do every day from a long-term health perspective, though it does not feel like it. You run on the treadmill with a harness that applies about 70% of your body weight in simulated downforce, a crude approximation of gravity loading. You do resistance training with the specially designed resistance device that works without free weights. You do the bone loading protocol, specific impact exercises designed to signal your skeleton to maintain density. After 2.5 hours, you are genuinely tired. You shower, or rather use the waterless cleaning system, and then a small amount of warm water with a carefully contained spray. Water is too precious to use freely. Afternoon is science work, the primary reason for the mission from the programmatic perspective. You are analysing soil samples collected during the last surface EVA. The mass spectrometer data is being processed. You are looking for isotopic signatures that might indicate past or present biological activity. This is genuinely interesting work. It is why you trained for years and why you are here. For an hour or two in the afternoon, absorbed in the data, the confinement and the monotony and the low-level background stress recede. Evening communications preparation. You record your response to your family. You record a response to a question from your graduate students. Yes, you are still nominally supervising a research group on Earth, asynchronously, which is one of the things that keeps you connected to a professional community and to work that extends beyond the mission itself. Dinner. Another meal from the rotation. One of your crewmates has done something creative with the freeze-dried ingredients tonight. A small act of kitchen improvisation that produces something that tastes slightly different. Everyone at the table notices. It is a genuinely good moment, out of proportion to what it is. You talk for an hour at the table in a way you haven't talked in weeks. This is what good crew dynamics look like. The ability to find genuine warmth and connection in very small things. Before bed, your daily radiation dose update. You received 1.1 millisieverts today. Your cumulative dose for the mission so far is 487 millisieverts. You are roughly on track to end the mission with a total dose of about 1,100 millisieverts. You knew this going in. You accepted it. You think about it for a moment. Not with dread exactly, but with the awareness of someone carrying a weight that is real but manageable. Sleep. The lighting shifts to night mode, cool blue-white fading to dim red. Your melatonin supplement is on your nightstand. You take it. You close your eyes. Tomorrow, another day. Maintenance, exercise, science, communication. The routine that is simultaneously the structure that keeps you functional and the monotony that wears at you. This is what it is to be here, and you would not trade it. Let us now talk about what happens after the mission, about the lives that Mars astronauts will live when they come back, and about what that tells us about the real human cost of deep space. They will come back. Some of them changed in ways that are clearly positive, a perspective on Earth and on human life that very few people have ever had. An experience of another world that is irreplaceable, a sense of having contributed something genuinely historic. Some changed in ways that are more complex, vision that is not quite what it was before flight, bone density that has recovered but may never fully return to pre-flight levels. A cognitive profile that has shifted in subtle ways that standard tests may not fully capture, but that the person themselves notices. A relationship to isolation and confinement that has been tested in ways that change how solitude and crowds feel. And a relationship to Earth that is transformed. Every astronaut who has returned from a long mission describes a period of intense re-experiencing of the ordinary world. The smell of rain, the sensation of wind on skin, the sound of birds, the weight of their own body in a chair, as overwhelmingly intense. Things that were background noise before become foreground experience after months of deprivation. Mars returnees will experience this more intensely than any ISS returnee. 3 years of absence from the living world, from everything biological, everything atmospheric, everything of Earth's specific sensory texture. coming back to that after 3 years away would be, by all accounts of comparable experiences, a profound and disorienting and beautiful experience. Some will struggle to reintegrate. The psychological adjustment from having been somewhere unique, from carrying an experience that no one around them can share, is real and is documented in other explorer communities. Antarctic winter-over returnees, submarine crew members after extended patrols, people who have survived genuinely extreme experiences, all report a period of difficulty reconnecting with a world that continued normally while they were gone. The support structures for this reintegration, psychological care, community, time, are as important as the mission support during flight. Taking care of the people who go does not end when the capsule splashes down. This is part of what it means to be honest about the human cost of deep space. The cost is not only the radiation dose and the bone loss and the risk during flight. It is also the changed life that continues afterward, the permanent alteration of what it means to be that specific person. They go as one kind of person, they come back as another. Not broken, not diminished, but permanently changed. That is the real cost of deep space, and the real gift of it. Let us talk about something that has been implicit throughout everything we have discussed, but has not been stated directly. About the fundamental paradox at the heart of human deep space exploration. We are biological organisms that evolved on a specific planet. Every system in our bodies is calibrated for that planet's specific conditions. And we are also cognitive beings with the capacity to build technologies that can take us beyond those conditions, into environments where our biology fails, but where our technology can partially compensate. This paradox, biology anchored to one world, cognition reaching beyond it, is what makes space exploration both possible and costly. It is the gap between what we can imagine and plan and build and what our bodies can sustain. Every challenge we have discussed tonight is an expression of this gap. Radiation. Our biology evolved inside a magnetosphere and atmosphere that filter most harmful radiation. Remove those filters and the biology is exposed to an environment it was never shaped to handle. Weightlessness. Our biology evolved under constant gravitational loading. Remove that loading and the systems that depend on it, bone, muscle, cardiovascular, begin to fail. Isolation. Our biology evolved in rich social and ecological environments. Remove those environments and the systems that depend on them, circadian rhythm, immune regulation, psychological well-being, begin to deteriorate. The technology we build to compensate, spacesuits, shielding, exercise devices, pharmacological countermeasures, life support systems, is our cognitive response to a biological limitation. It is remarkable. It is genuinely extraordinary that we can build systems complex enough to keep human beings alive in an environment so hostile to their existence. But it is not complete. The technology closes the gap partially. It does not close it entirely. The residual gap is the biological cost that astronauts pay. This is not a failure of engineering. It is a statement about the relationship between biology and technology in the specific context of deep space. Biology is the result of billions of years of optimization for a specific set of conditions. Technology is decades old. The optimization differential means there are things biology does, maintaining bone density, regulating immune function, supporting psychological well-being, that technology can only partially replicate. What this means practically: every person who travels to deep space pays to some degree with their biology. This is true now. It will be somewhat less true in 20 years as countermeasures improve. it will be less true still in 50 years. But it may never be entirely untrue. There may always be a residual biological cost to leaving Earth, a cost that technology can reduce, but not eliminate. A cost that is accepted by those who go because the experience is worth it to them. This is not tragic, it is honest. Let us now talk about what specific research programs are currently operating that directly address the challenges we have discussed, about where the science is actually happening and what it is finding. NASA's Human Research Program, HRP, is the primary organizational structure for research into human health and performance in space. It is organized around specific evidence reports for each major risk area: radiation, behavioral health, bone and muscle, sensory motor adaptation, nutrition, and others. The HRP funds research at universities, NASA centers, and in partnership with other space agencies. It maintains a comprehensive database of the risk evidence, what we know, what we need to know, and what research is planned or underway to close the knowledge gaps. Current active research areas include individualized radiation risk modeling. Rather than applying the same radiation risk model to all astronauts, HRP is developing models that incorporate individual genetic factors, age, sex, and mission profile, to produce individualized lifetime cancer risk estimates. This allows more precise risk-benefit analysis for specific individuals on specific missions. The NASA twin study findings that gene expression changes occurred during Scott Kelly's mission and some persisted after return spurred a new research program into epigenetic changes during spaceflight. How does the space environment alter which genes are expressed? And do these alterations persist? What are their functional consequences? Advanced nutrition research. Developing food formulations with longer shelf life, better radiation resistance, and higher retention of specific micronutrients critical for radiation resistance and bone health. Investigating whether specific dietary patterns or supplements can reduce radiation-induced DNA damage or accelerate its repair. Behavioral health countermeasures. Developing and validating specific psychological support tools, cognitive behavioral therapy protocols adapted for the space environment, mindfulness applications, social cohesion programs, and testing them in analog environments before deployment. SANS research, the spaceflight-associated neuro-ocular syndrome. Understanding why some astronauts develop vision changes and others do not. Identifying which countermeasures, elevated CO2 levels, exercise, dietary interventions, sleeping position, affect its development. Determining whether it represents permanent pathology or adaptive remodeling. Each of these research threads is producing real data. The knowledge base about human health in space is genuinely improving. The trajectory is in the right direction, but the timeline is compressed relative to mission planning. Mars missions are being discussed for the 2030s and 2040s. The research programs currently running will not have resolved all the major uncertainties by then. Some missions will fly with residual uncertainty about the consequences. This is the honest situation. Not a reason not to go, but a reason to go with clear eyes about what is known and what is not. Let us now talk about a specific and relatively recent development that has changed the calculus of deep space medicine, about the emergence of commercial space medicine as a research and operational field. Until relatively recently, space medicine was almost entirely the domain of government space agencies, NASA, Roscosmos, ESA, JAXA. The small number of people who had been to space meant a small data set, centralized in governmental institutions, published through traditional academic channels. The commercial spaceflight era is changing this. SpaceX's Crew Dragon has flown private citizens. Blue Origin's New Shepard and Virgin Galactic's Spaceship Two provide brief suborbital experiences. Axiom Space is developing commercial ISS access and planning a commercial space station. SpaceX's Starship is intended to carry large numbers of people to the Moon and Mars. This is creating a new market for space medicine, not just for professional astronauts, but for paying customers, many of whom are older and have pre-existing medical conditions that would have previously disqualified them from spaceflight. The Inspiration 4 mission in 2021, the first all-civilian orbital mission carried by Crew Dragon, included a comprehensive health monitoring program. The crew members were monitored before, during, and after their 3-day orbital mission, with an intensity comparable to professional astronaut studies. The data was published, contributing to the scientific database in ways that expand beyond the traditional astronaut population. This is significant because it broadens the dataset and because it creates economic incentives for research into space medicine that do not depend on government funding cycles. Commercial entities have financial reasons to understand and manage health risks for their customers. This creates a research ecosystem that complements rather than duplicates governmental research. The long-term implication: as more people go to space, the medical database expands. More data means better understanding of individual variation in responses to the space environment. Better understanding means better targeted countermeasures. Better countermeasures means lower biological cost per mission. This is the trajectory. It is slow by the standards of urgency that Mars mission timelines impose, but it is real and it is accelerating. Let us now talk about something that is both the most concrete and the most philosophically significant point we have not yet made directly, about why deep space medicine matters, even for people who will never leave Earth. The challenges of keeping humans alive and healthy in deep space are, at their core, challenges of keeping biological systems functional in hostile environments. The specific hostile environment is deep space, but the biology is human biology, the same biology that fails in cancer, in aging, in environmental exposure, in metabolic disease. Research that protects astronauts from radiation damage protects all humans from the consequences of environmental radiation exposure, from cancer radiation therapy, from nuclear accidents, from medical imaging. The DNA repair mechanisms, the radioprotective compounds, the understanding of how radiation interacts with tissue, all of this is human biology, applicable wherever the biology is found. Research that prevents bone loss in weightlessness is research into osteoporosis, the same condition that causes hip fractures in elderly people around the world. The mechanisms, the countermeasures, the pharmaceutical interventions developed in space, applicable on Earth. Research into the cognitive effects of prolonged stress and sleep deprivation in space is research into the cognitive effects of these ubiquitous stressors on Earth, in shift workers, in emergency responders, in people with sleep disorders, in people under prolonged occupational stress. Research into maintaining psychological health in small, isolated groups under prolonged stress is research into mental health in general, in prisons, in remote communities, in disaster situations, in any context where people must sustain themselves without access to the broader social support structures most of us take for granted. Deep space medicine is a concentrated, accelerated, high-stakes version of some of the most important challenges in general medicine and public health. The space environment is not the setting, it is the laboratory, an extreme environment that reveals in months rather than decades biological processes that play out slowly in the ordinary world. This is one of the reasons to fund and pursue this research even beyond the value of any specific mission. The knowledge gained from keeping humans alive in deep space will keep many more humans alive and healthy on Earth. Let us now talk about what this entire conversation has been, about the specific picture that emerges when you put all of these challenges together and try to see the whole. Deep space does not want us there. Not with hostility, it is not capable of intention, but with the indifference of physics operating without exception. Radiation follows the inverse square law, and the laws of nuclear physics, without adjustment for biology. Weightlessness removes gravitational loading without adjustment for skeletal health. The absence of a biosphere removes the sensory richness that human psychology requires, without adjustment for human psychology. Everything that makes deep space hostile to us is a consequence of the absence of Earth, of the conditions Earth provides that are so specific to it that no other place in accessible space provides them. And so the challenge of deep space is, at its core, the challenge of bringing enough Earth with us to survive. Not all of Earth, that is impossible, but enough. Enough atmosphere, enough pressure, enough shielding against radiation, enough loading on the skeleton, enough circadian rhythm, enough social richness, enough medicine, enough food, enough water. Enough of everything our biology requires, transported from the only world that provides it naturally, carried in containers across the void. This is extraordinary. The fact that we can do this at all, that we can approximate enough of Earth's conditions in a metal capsule to keep a human being alive for months or years, is one of the most remarkable achievements of human civilization. That we cannot do it perfectly, that the approximation is incomplete, that gaps remain, that biological costs accumulate, is not a failure. It is an honest accounting of where we are in a project that has barely begun. We have been to space for 60 years. We have had people continuously in low Earth orbit for about 24 years. We have never had people beyond the Moon's orbit for more than a few days. Deep space, the Mars distance and beyond frontier, is genuinely new territory. The medicine is genuinely new territory. The biology of long-duration deep space travel is unknown in ways that are not merely gaps in detail, but gaps in fundamental understanding. And into this genuinely new territory, in the not-so-distant future, people will go. They will go knowing this, knowing the radiation dose they will accumulate, knowing their vision may be affected, knowing their bones will be weaker at the end than at the beginning, knowing that for 3 years they will live in a metal container with a small group of people, unable to leave, unable to call home without a 40-minute round-trip wait, unable to step outside without a suit that keeps the vacuum from killing them. They will go anyway, because the alternative, not going, not finding out, not being there, is for some people simply not acceptable. Not acceptable in the way that staying home when you could go is not acceptable to certain people. Not acceptable in the way that knowing a question exists and not asking it is not acceptable to certain people. Deep space is the next question, and there are people who cannot not ask it. Those people will go. They will pay the biological price. They will come back changed. Some aspects of the change will resolve, others will not. And what they learn about Mars, about deep space, about human biology in genuinely novel conditions, about themselves, will be the foundation for everything that comes after. The first humans on Mars will be pioneers in the fullest sense of the word, going somewhere no one has been, doing something no one has done, paying a price no one has yet paid in exactly this way, and making it possible for those who follow to pay a little less. That is what pioneers do. Go outside tonight. Find Mars if it is visible, the reddish point that does not twinkle like the stars. Or simply look up at whatever is there, the moon, a planet, the stars themselves. Think about distance for a moment. Not the poetic kind of distance, the literal, physical kind. Mars at its closest is 54 million kilometers away. At its farthest, more than 400 million. The signal from Earth takes between 3 and 22 minutes to cross that distance at the speed of light. A human being in a spacecraft would take 6 to 9 months. We're going to send people there, knowing everything we have talked about tonight, knowing that beyond the magnetosphere, beyond the invisible shield that surrounds this planet and deflects the charged particles streaming from the Sun and the galaxy, the radiation begins accumulating immediately, every hour, every day, quietly, invisibly, damaging DNA in cells that were not built for this exposure. Over the course of a 3-year mission, the total dose will exceed the current lifetime limit that NASA sets for astronaut careers. That limit was set for a reason. It will be exceeded anyway. Knowing that in weightlessness the skeleton begins to lose density at about 1 to 2% per month, that muscles atrophy even with 2.5 hours of exercise every day, that the heart shrinks because it no longer needs to push blood upward against gravity, that fluid shifts toward the head, pressing on the optic nerve, potentially altering vision in ways that may not fully reverse, knowing that the brain itself changes structurally during long missions, that white matter integrity shifts, that cerebrospinal fluid redistributes in ways that alter brain shape within the skull, that cognitive performance on standardized tests declines in measurable ways that the person experiencing the decline often cannot accurately self-assess. Knowing that for 3 years, a crew of perhaps 6 people will live in a metal environment smaller than a modest apartment, that they will breathe recycled air, drink recycled water, eat food that has been stored for years and has lost some fraction of its nutritional content to radiation and time. That they will hear the same sounds, the hum of fans and compressors every day, and smell the same smell, and see the same faces, and navigate the same corridors. Knowing that communication with Earth will lag by up to 20 minutes each way, that a medical emergency requiring immediate expert guidance will instead require 40 minutes of waiting between question and answer. That surgery in weightlessness, if surgery is needed, is performed without a real operating room, without a surgical team, by crew members whose medical training is comprehensive but not that of surgeons, in conditions where blood forms spherical droplets and organs do not settle under gravity. Knowing that if something goes catastrophically wrong, a fire, a critical system failure, a medical emergency beyond the crew's ability to manage, there is no rescue. No ship can reach them in hours or days. The crew is alone in a way that no human beings have ever been alone. Knowing all of this, and going anyway. This is not recklessness. It is not ignorance. The people who will make this journey will know every number we have discussed tonight. They will have read the studies. They will have discussed the risks with flight surgeons and mission planners in exhaustive detail. They will have signed informed consent documents that lay out the specific biological costs in plain language. And they will sign those documents. And they will train for years. And they will strap themselves into a vehicle and leave Earth. Because some things are worth the price. Not to everyone. Not even to most people. But to some people. And it only takes some people. The chance to stand on another world outweighs what it costs to get there. The chance to be the first human to look up at a sky that is not Earth's sky, to feel the ground of a planet where nothing has ever walked, to collect a rock that has never been touched by any living thing in the history of the solar system. This is worth radiation dose and bone loss and 3 years of recycled air. This is the same calculation that was made by every person who crossed an ocean before the crossing was safe, by every person who climbed a mountain before the route was established, by every person who flew before flight was reliable. The calculation that the value of going exceeds the cost. History does not remember most of them, but it remembers what they found, and it built the next thing on what they learned. The first humans on Mars will face everything we have discussed and more, the unknown unknowns that no mission plan can anticipate, the biological surprises that a genuinely novel environment always produces. They will cope with some of these. They may not cope with all of them. They will come back, if they come back, changed in ways both profound and permanent. And their experience, everything they endured and everything they discovered, will become the foundation for the next mission, which will be slightly safer, slightly better prepared, slightly less costly to the bodies of the people who go. This is how it works. This is how it has always worked. The cost is real. The biology is honest about what it requires, and the people who go are honest about what they are accepting. Look at the sky tonight. Somewhere up there, beyond the comfortable shell of magnetosphere and atmosphere that Earth has provided to every living thing that has ever existed on this planet, is the place we are going. Hostile to our biology, indifferent to our presence, waiting. And we are going there anyway, because we cannot not. Because the question of what is out there is not the kind of question our species leaves unanswered when an answer is possible. Because Mars is the next place, and beyond Mars is the next place after that, and the universe is very large, and we are very curious, and we have never in our entire existence as a species looked at a horizon and decided not to find out what was on the other side. The cost is real, we will pay it, and it will be worth it.